Hello Europa Universalis players, my name's Riemann and today I want to show you the Minghals strategy. By and large, EU4 focuses mostly on Europe, which makes sense given the time period and what this game is called. This means other areas of the world get relatively less attention paid to them, and so you can occasionally get really weird things happening, either through the AI just doing what it does, or by a savvy player who managed to figure out a way of connecting a few loopholes to create an interesting strategy. Perhaps the most overpowered of these strategies uses a particular loophole available to the Ming to become a terrifying powerhouse very early in the game. It fuses the best aspect of the Ming, their massive development, with the Mughal national ideas, which are some of the best in the game. It removes the built-in nerfs the game has on the Ming to balance them, while at the same time giving it ideas that are tailor-made for widespread expansion, creating an unstoppable early-game juggernaut and catapulting it into an easy position for global domination or an outright world conquest. So today I want to show you the power of the Minghals in Europa Universalis 4. If you take a look at the world powers in 1444, you'll notice the number one spot is the Ming, and rightly so. They control the entirety of the extremely populous Chinese region, have an unrivaled development, have more provinces than any other nation, and have no immediate neighbors that can even begin to pose a threat. But if you played a couple of EU4 games, you've probably seen that despite these massive advantages, Ming is relatively subdued. It doesn't go on a massive conquering spree like Russia or the Ottomans, despite having such a high development. In fact, you've probably seen it collapse entirely on multiple occasions. The reason for this is the unique government type Ming has, the Celestial Empire, which essentially nerfs it into the ground. Way back in the days of EU3, there were no special precautions against a rampaging Ming, and thus it wasn't an uncommon sight to see it owning vast portions of Asia by the 17th century. To respond to this, ever since the Divine Wind expansion in EU3, the game has had significant obstacles for Ming to shackle its expansion. The first of these has always been the Mandate of Heaven, a triggered modifier which basically guarantees a Mingplosion if the AI loses it for any extended period of time. The second shackle is the 50% base level autonomy in all provinces, essentially chopping Ming's economy and military capabilities in half. Because of this, while they're still far stronger than their immediate neighbors, they aren't as overwhelming as you might think. The way you're supposed to get rid of the Celestial Empire is by getting a bunch of institutions. Typically, you need the Renaissance, colonialism, the printing press, and global trade. Waiting for the printing press can take a long time, as I showed in my analysis of institutions, so the AI usually has to wait until the late 1600s or even more, while a good player can reform by about 1665. That's over 2 centuries of 50% autonomy and the looming specter of massive rebel problems. While this is doable, we can do better. Some formidable countries have government changes built into their decision. This can bypass the requirements for getting rid of the Celestial Empire. For the most part, these types of country formations are too far away from East Asia, or have specific exclusions that prevent Ming from taking them. The Mughal Empire, however, has no such exclusions, and is fairly close to China. The requirements to take this decision are shown here. For the most part, they are trivial, except for 2, being the right culture and taking the 5 provinces. The provinces you need to take are shown here. For the most part, there's nothing unusual here, and it should be easy enough for you to seize them. Here's some tips on how to do it fast. As you start the game, immediately begin fabricating claims on the Tibetan miners Kham and Yutsang. Then invade them as soon as you can. They shouldn't have very good alliances, so your only real enemy is attrition. You might want to use mercenaries to save on manpower here. Next, continue snaking your way west, annexing the minor Himalayan nations in your way. Get to a position where you're ready to strike against Delhi and Jaunpur. These two have 4 of the 5 provinces you need. I attacked Jaunpur first. I diplomatically isolated it by allying to its allies, dragging them into a war with some random miners, then declaring war on Jaunpur itself. This meant their allies couldn't honor the call to arms, so Jaunpur fell quickly. I took Central Doab and the one province in the way. Make sure you don't go wild and take as many provinces as you can, because aggressive expansion can be a real concern here with the rich provinces. I next attacked Delhi using the same general strategies and quickly took the required provinces. These wars should be quite easy as long as you're diplomatically positioning yourself well, which should be simple given your power. Finally, you have to take the Timurids' border province of Ro. While the Timmies are the strongest opponent on paper, I found they were actually the easiest to take over, going the entire war without seeing any of their troops. First, I isolated them by using the Break Alliance feature of Great Powers, which is another example of how you can leverage your power to bully others. Next, you should remember that they're a horde, and as such gain 25% shock on flat terrain, but lose 25% shock in hilly terrain. Given that all the terrain around Ro and the surrounding areas is either hills or mountains, it's quite easy to just sit on the war goal and wait for the score to tick up. You should try to take Jalalabad as well, because it turns out you need a minimum of 20 development to accept a culture. That brings me to the other order of business, flipping to the right culture. If you've never done this, it's a lot simpler than you think, although you will need some dip and admin points. First, move your capital to Ro after you're done coring it and making it a state. This will be somewhat expensive due to the development differential, but it's well worth the cost. Next, unstatify everything you own except for the state Ro is in. Now you should be able to accept Afghani culture, because it only checks that you have 50% in your state's development, not your autonomy modified development as you might think. Then pay another 100 dip to make Afghani your primary culture, and voila, you should be able to take the decision to form the Mughals. I managed to do all this by 1493, effectively reforming the Ming almost 2 centuries early. So what are the payoffs from doing this? Well, as I said before, you drop the Celestial Empire. You won't have to worry about losing the mandate and getting tons of rebels now. What's more is you can get the autonomy of your provinces down now. You should immediately restatify everything you can, because this drops autonomy back down to 50 for no cost. Then you can gradually switch your territorial cores to regular cores, which is somewhat expensive, but here's how the math breaks down. Normally, coring costs 10 admin per development. However, the Mughal ideas give minus 25% core creation cost. You also get another minus 25% from the admin ideas, which I highly suggest you take as your first idea group. Finally, you only have to redo the territorial cores, which halves any remaining cost since you're not making the cores from scratch. So the 10 admin per development drops down to 2.5, and if you have a good ruler and a level 3 advisor, you can do this in a decade or two. Your other main payoff comes from the Mughals themselves. You get their amazing ideas, specifically their 25% core creation reduction. On top of this, they get plus 3 tolerance of heathens, and if you combo this with humanist, you can get the maximum heathen tolerance, allowing you to effectively ignore religion for the entire game. They also get idea and tech cost reductions, saving you plenty of points over the course of the game. Finally, by forming the Mughals, you get a permanent claim over all of India. If you didn't think you were big enough yet, you now get another 25% reduction in core cost over the entire subcontinent, with lessened aggressive expansion and initial autonomy to boot. This strategy has been around in the game every now and then for quite a while now, even if it hasn't been as easy as it is currently. The first person to show this strategy was DDRJake all the way back in 2014. He actually made a Let's Play out of it, so if you want to check out what hoops he had to jump through back in the day, I'll put a link in the description. Now you may be wondering why I put the word Twilight in the title. With the new expansion, Mandate of Heaven, coming out soon, we're going to get a lot more mechanics in East Asia. I'm extremely excited to see how the region will play out now, but it's also a little bittersweet because it looks like the Minghals will either be removed completely or won't be nearly as powerful as it once was. I wanted to give this strategy the proper send-off it deserves, and to let other people have the option to try it out one last time before it passes into the annals of EU4 history. It's one of the easiest alternatives to the Ottomans if you're aiming to do a world conquest, and can acclimate you to how Asian conquests work in regards to institutions. As always, I've put links to my sources and other info in the description below. My name's Riemann, and until next time, thanks for watching.